Hello, I'm actually in Richardson Hall still. I haven't left for the day, and I had enough of your feedback that told me that you would like to just have a little guide of how to prepare for any exam, and I'll switch it to a little bit to if you're doing biology or something else in a second, but how to study for math exams. This probably works for Gen Chem and so forth. And I am a little nervous about doing this because a professor really shouldn't be telling students to do this, but again, this is probably a way to trim the fat. So what you need to do is take the days that you have, whether you have work that day or not, that there are a set amount of things that you're going to do each day. So if you have, for example, you close 5 to 10, then you know you'll be tired, but there's one day that you have a longer period of time, then you want to place more of those jobs on that one day, but you don't want to leave those other days empty of jobs, because if you don't do that, you'll end up having to cram more and it won't help. So each day you should have a list of jobs that you're going to do. So for example, I'm going to do 5 problems off the review sheet. So we have the review sheet. When you select those 5 problems that you're going to do per day, make sure those 5 problems are not like all the 4 problems right at the beginning of the review sheet, that you pick one problem in each section. So there should be a variety, so that instead of running through and really knowing one thing really well, you're hitting on every single one each day. So I would say 5 problems per day, like from the review sheet, and you might not finish the review sheet. That's just the way it is, but you've hit every topic. And I'm going to tell you that if you do this, it'll give you a very set thing that you're going to do for that day, and you're not just sitting down with a whole pile of stuff in front of you, that you have something very structured. Now, sometimes when you're tired from work, it means that you will look at that and say, get through 3 problems and say, I'm done, I'm really sick of this. That may happen. Try to push yourself to get the full goal that you set for yourself that evening. What I meant by each problem, like if you look at our own review sheet, I would select problem number 2 because it looks harder than the 4 here. So the first day at the beginning, when you do your studying, pick the ones that have they're more difficult first. So I would pick that one, number 2 first, and number 9 from the second set, and so forth. So pick a few that are more demanding first, because if you can't do those problems, you know that that's where you need the help. If you pick the easy one first, then you're not really going to get anywhere. So sometimes you'll start the problem and you'll have absolutely no clue. So let's just take the first one. It says find the derivative of each using the limit definition. I selected problem number 2. And let's say I have no clue how to start it. Well, that's when you text me, and since you started early, you can text me and I'll be able to get you jump started. Or another place to look to quickly find things are to go to the previous exam or quiz keys that have the same problem on there. So hunt around on the previous quiz keys or exams to see where this problem was. And those problems are sketched out on the keys, not as in detail as what you would have in one of the lecture videos, but it is a way to not go flipping through the notes. You'll have a way to quickly go and identify how to start that problem and really review that problem, and then maybe go look for the YouTube video that is attached to that problem, because now you'll know more about what that problem solution looks like from the quiz key or the exam key. That's just how to find it. But if you start the problem and you remember most of it, oh, I remember x1 was a, and y1 was f at a, and x2 was x, and y2 was f of x. And I remember something, I'm supposed to put that in the slope formula, and I did, but now I don't know what to do. Highlight exactly where you got stuck. So try to do this without any notes in front of you. Highlight where you got stuck and go to the notes and see if you can figure out what the next step is that you didn't remember. And then put a little note in your write-up of where you got stuck. So let's suppose you got stuck at the part where you're supposed to rationalize the numerator. Then put a little note to yourself. Remember to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate, or whatever will make you remember what to do next. And then redo the problem and write that little note first, so that when you get to that step, you know where you get stuck. Look back at your note where you said, okay, this is where you forgot what to do last time, and remember that will tell you what to do next. It's like a little crutch. It could be a sentence that makes you remember it. It could be a formula that makes you remember it. So instead of remembering how to do the whole problem, that's how students usually look at it. I'm going to remember how to do the whole problem. Just put in the crutches just to remind you how to jumpstart where you fell apart. So that's, you're really supposed to learn how to do the whole problem. But if you're doing it in this crunched way that I'm sharing with you, you're really trimming that out and saying, I'm just going to put in a little reminder where I kept falling apart. You usually will fall apart at the same place. And so it's easy to identify that. So I'm giving you an example. If you have find the derivative of each using the limit definition, and you forget this part that you're supposed to multiply by this thing right here, just write a little note to yourself. Remember how you're supposed to, at some point in this problem, multiply top and bottom of a fraction by this thing. And then you have a little crutch. I'm just giving you an example of where you might have fallen apart, and then you fill it in. Where you fall apart will not be the same where someone else falls apart. So then what you would do is redo the whole problem, but write your crutch at the top and see if you can get through the whole thing by having that little crutch on the top. When it comes to the exam day, there might be a bunch of crutches that you have. Memorize those crutches, associate them to the problem, and the very first thing when you get onto the test, you want to put all those crutches in first before you start working any problem. Just look, oh, this type of problem, that was my crutch for this type of problem. Remember this type of problem, that was my crutch for this. Fill in all your crutches. They may be formulas you needed for that particular problem. They might be that that reminder, oh yeah, don't forget, plug into y prime and not y. So at the different places, just write in a little note to yourself. And what that does for you is it de-stresses you, because you're being very proactive about where you fell apart, and now you know that you won't fall apart because you have these little reminders to yourself of what you're supposed to do. So if you work a lot of hours, what it can feel like when you walk into the test is that you'll feel like when you see all the testing in front of you that you really don't know anything. So if you do this crutch business, it kind of minimizes the stuff that you're trying to remember and hold all in your head when you get there. And they're not really the whole problem. They're just little pinpoints that get you going. They're little stimulants. The day before, you want to the day before is a very particular and special day, because the day before an exam, the more you cram there, the more you're going to mess up the next day. And that's just my personal, like what I have known, that the day before what I do really matters. So if I'm trying to learn something new, or I'm trying to find my red flags where I couldn't figure out something, that's a bad thing. What you want to do the day before is have yourself already prepared. Like maybe each of the days that you cut out your job is that, well, I'm going to make a sample test of my day one work. So you take all the 5 problems that you set aside for day one, and that represents one sample exam. And the second one represents a second sample exam. So the day before, you're only going to pick up your sample exams and then practice filling in your crutches and getting through the problems. There should be no new learning and no going to the videos and trying to understand things that day, because anything you do that day, it's going to be kind of melded together on the day of the test. So those are the big things. It's pretty short, but they work incredibly well. They're not perfect, they're not fail-proof, so you might forget a crutch when you get to the exam, or you might misrepresent a crutch, so not perfect. That's why I say you can usually end up with a B- using this approach. It's still work, but it's systematic, targeted work that's only going for strategically hitting an exam. If this was I've had bio exams where it's not problems. This works really well for CAM because those are problems. You have a particular problems, they have a particular cut up for the solution. But if you have a bio exam where they're asking you essay questions, what you do is you make study guides and go through the whole set of things. I write the question in red, a sample question, and the answer in blue. And so I have, like, by the time I have 10 pages of a study guide, each day I add more to that study guide, and the day before the test, I only study that study guide. So I'm only going through and seeing, can I answer these questions without looking at my blue answer? And that's how I handled, I've had some in bio that have been like that, where I had to recreate things. And that's how I've approached those. So that's very similar to this approach, but for a different style of exam. So I hope this helps. You can call me if you want me to help you cut up small jobs, look at exactly your schedule. I can work with you and do that with you. So just text me if you want me to do that with you. Good luck.